Hail Internet! It's Theron, it's Matt, the Dork Lords. We're here talking about the Battle of the Five Armies. We're revisiting, this is the last film of our 6-film revisiting series. Before we launch into, things we like, things we didn't like, do you have any memories, good sir, of seeing this live, say in the theater or something like that?
Nothing terribly special. I was on a business trip to Seattle, visiting my old stomping grounds at the time, and I snuck off after work. And a friend of mine from my previous job came along. He's like, "Oh yeah, I'll go, sure. I haven't seen the other ones." I'm like, "Oh, okay, come on." But I was very eager to see it. I was ringing with anticipation to see how it would open, and yeah, I was blown away by the Smog scenes. Those were fantastic. I was really excited when the first music came up. Oh, one thing about the music real quick that I have to bring up, and I know it's a little early.
Sure.
This is my only real thing that I noticed was this movie was the only movie of the 6 that didn't feature the main theme in the music. In the opening, like when you see the Hobbit music, it usually goes da 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 for the Hobbit, right? And in the Lord of the Rings, is da 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 da. Right. Everybody knows that. This one doesn't do it. It skips that. Little interesting thing about this movie. But yeah, I mean, I thought the Smaug scenes were great, and then I'll leave it at that. We'll take it up later. But that was my memory. Right. It was cool to see it away again from my home. Yeah.
I had a cool memory of seeing it. When the extended came out, they did a one-night-only theatrical release, and it happened to be showing down the street from me here in Chicago, and so I got to go, and it was right around this time of year, in fact. I went, it was kind of like a little birthday present to myself, and so I got to see the extended version on screen. I was really, really psyched to see it. You could see, like, right away, like, why they cut much of the stuff they cut, because it jumped the rating to an R. I mean, it was like, there's a lot of bloody decapitations. It was like, oh, okay, gore and violence. But, it was war footage. I'll say this, too, though. What was funny is, in the extended version, what character we're going to talk about at length here, Alfred dies. And actually, in the theater, I actually cheered. I was like, yeah! Woo!
I expect
everybody kind of looked around at me. I'm like, I mean, no, oh. But yeah, I was so glad to see him die. Yeah, so that was my memory of the extended. So yeah, you've already mentioned the Smaug scene. That's how we start off. Smaug attacking Lake Town. Gorgeous scene. And it's just fantasy video at its best. It's like, more please. I couldn't get enough of that scene. That stuff was great.
Fantastic. My particular favorite part of that scene is the actual death of Smaug when he's soaring up into the air going, I think that's just beautifully shot.
And you see his eye turn like gray or whatever, and then he just falls back. That's pretty sweet. Now,
why did he have to fall on the master instead of Alfred?
I know, damn it. Oh, this movie could have been so much better. If he falls on Alfred, the master stays around and then is like, oh, I'm the master. And then Bard's like, you're not the master. That's fine. I'll take that. I'll take that footage.
Done. Yeah.
Now, one of the things we see in the Smaug scene and throughout the movie is the appearance of Bard's kid, Bane. Now, Bard uses Bane to kill Smaug with the arrow and all that stuff. And part of that is obviously Bard's motivation. He's motivated to save his kids, his family. But there's also a thing about it, which is that Bane is going to be the king of Dale. Like in between the Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings, Bane is the king. So we're seeing like the future king of Dale, taking ownership in some ways of his destiny. Kind of cool.
Yeah.
Also, right there in that first 45 minutes or so, you've got the White Council attacks Dol Guldur. It probably didn't go down exactly that way, maybe in the books, but the White Council did chase Sauron out of Dol Guldur at this time, so this is a version of that. I'm cool with it. It looks really, really cool. I mean, like Elrond's armor and his swords, man. I was like, well, get me a set. Something else that was interesting I noticed in watching it this time around, not watching it in the theater, but watching it on video, is, you know, the attention to detail on the armor for the Nine is actually pretty intense. It's really good stuff, but you wouldn't know it really. I mean, in the movie theater, they at first they're kind of ephemeral, but they pass by so fast that you don't really get a chance to look at it in detail. But
each one is different.
Yeah. They spent some time on it, and it was a cool scene. I also liked Galadriel, her speech to Sauron when she says, like, "You have no power here." Made me think of Two Towers, which is when Saruman says that through Theoden to Gandalf, right? "You have no power here, Gandalf the Grey." So that made me think maybe that's where Saruman got this line from in the movie terms. Like, he was there; they were both there when Galadriel said, "You have no power here" to Sauron. Years later, when he's in a wizard's duel with Gandalf, he's like, "Oh, I'll bring this back."
That's a cool line. I'm using it.
Yeah, exactly. You're a plagiarist. What did you think about that Dol Guldur scene? Did you enjoy that scene as well?
I did. I wasn't blown away by it, but I liked it. The fight itself was, I mean, in terms of like the scale of sorry fights to great fights, and these 6 movies is probably on the slightly lower end. But I didn't like how like Gandalf and Galadriel have their conversation just very casually. It seems like, you've got 9 around you. Hurry up.
Little sense of urgency, which we see later too.
I know.
Dane and Thorin. They're like
that too.
Middle of a giant fight. "Hey, what's going on, cousin?" You know, could be better.
But dude, I love "Leave Sauron to me." That's a great line.
Right, and great. Obviously, we know what happens after that.
Right.
Saruman was a jerk, so that was a bad moment there. But those scenes are cool, and we're kind of off and running with this movie, and so you're like, all right.
But don't forget about the cut back to Erebor. Like, that happens like while Smaug is like laying waste to Lake Town. I think that's a beautiful scene too, with the balancing poor souls.
It looks gorgeous.
Yeah, beautiful. I mean, and then the when it shows Thorin looking in the opposite direction, and then once they realize that Smaug is dead, Thorin walks off towards the towards the entrance to Erebor. That's beautiful. Very well done. As it shows the name of the movie. When
Keeley, and Boffer, join up with the others at Erebor, and they're walking up toward Erebor.
Yep.
I remember seeing that in the theater, just being like, "Whoa!" The landscape looks so cool. You're like, "Oh, yes, please." Interestingly, so obviously the reason that Thorin is looking back at Erebor is this idea of the dragon sickness that he then overcomes later in the movie. There is a reference to dragon sickness in the Hobbit in the book.
Oh,
so I thought I'd mention it.
Great.
Here, I'll just read you the passage because it also mentions how the Master dies in the book. He doesn't die by Smaug laying it on.
Right. Cool.
So here's the passage from the book. "The old Master had come to a bad end. Bard had given him much gold for the help of the lake people, but being of the kind that easily catches such disease, he fell under the dragon sickness, and took most of the gold and fled with it, and died of starvation in the waste, deserted by his companions." Like, starved to death and with gold in the wastes. Anyway.
Yeah, I didn't reread The Hobbit before watching these movies, and it'd been years. It still has been years since I've seen it. But I didn't recall that. I guess if it's mentioned in passing, that would explain it. But I did like how this movie mentioned dragon sickness and like a treasure hoard that a dragon has long brooded over. I thought those were brilliant additions. I had assumed until now that those were some liberties that the writers took, but it's good to hear that that's not the case, and I think they played it up very well.
Right. I would say my only minor complaint about the dragon sickness was how Thorin resolved it. Like, he's like, "Look, let me just go in a room and think about
that scene. Yeah, I'm not.
All right, I'm good." Like, what?
Yeah.
Wait, is that how you overcome like addiction? You just think about it for a while, and then you're like, oh,
yeah, doesn't work great. You're right. I agree.
Yeah, but they needed to get on somehow and figure out a way to have him solve the problem. So he solved it
Temporarily. Yeah, kind of. Well, he dies,
Right.
but it was like, that's not much of a resolution there, Thorin. And kind of he goes like crazy later. Oh no, I won't.
Yeah.
Let's go take it
Guys
back
of
from
starvation
the
in the wastes. But yeah, generally speaking, you know, obviously Erebor looked beautiful, but there's some just gorgeous scenery. The Dale in the snow.
Yep.
That scene when Thranduil is seeing all the dead elves, and he's just walking through Dale, and it's just snow falling. God, it just looks beautiful. I don't know, just something about that footage. You're like, wow, that's really cool. Also, just there's maybe some issues with the fight itself, but the actual location of the duel between Thorin and Azog, that ice-covered stream, is actually pretty cool looking, I think.
Yeah,
when
cool
they're right over a waterfall.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty sweet. So we mentioned the extended scenes. A lot of them were cut in order to keep the thing from being an R-rated film. I would say the best of the extended scenes is probably Thorin's funeral. I felt like that gave a nice goodbye to Thorin and Fili and Keeley from the rest of the group. We obviously see Bilbo mourn for Thorin, but it's kind of cool to see, I think, the whole cast get a chance to say goodbye to Thorin in that moment. I would have liked to have seen that stay in.
Yeah.
Because you also see the coronation of Dane, which is pretty important too.
I've only seen the extended version once, and for this discussion, I watched the theatrical version, but I had a bit of time, and I went back and watched some of the extended versions. I watched the battle in the extended version. I like that a lot more than the theatrical one. But now, yeah, I got to go back. I can't remember it now. I only saw that one.
You just see the shot of Thorin lying there. He's got the Arkenstone. Obviously, they're burying him with it, and they're just like passing by, kind of just paying their last respects to him. I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah,
and it's not over long. It's not like a 10-minute scene. Anyway, and in fact, I'll say this: my favorite scene, I think the most effective scene in this movie is Thorin's death. Like the Bilbo mourning over Thorin's body, like woo, when he's like sobbing, and you can like it gets me. Like I kind of like, oh no, God,
bring
no,
your
not
hanky.
Thorin. Yeah, bring your hanky. It's good. It's a really effective scene. I mean, Martin Freeman just sells it, and it's really, really effective. I don't know, do you have a favorite scene in particular, maybe from the movie?
It's really tough. If it's not the Smaug death scene, it's probably one of the scenes between Thorin and Bilbo. Not the death scene. I like it, but I don't like it as much. It's like I like the tension scenes between Bilbo and Thorin. I really like the scene where he's given the mithril shirt.
Oh,
and
sure.
And then he says, "I've been betrayed. One of them is false." And then I love the echo of the Smaug lines, like, "I would not part with one single coin." I think that was great. I love that. I think probably my favorite portrayal in the whole movie would have to be Thorin in this movie. I like the way he does the madness and the way he deals with everybody. He feels so isolated and solitary. I agree with you. I don't really care for the resolution scene, how he decides to come back and join the fight. That doesn't really work for me either. But overall, I like his performance a lot.
Another cool thing that I thought was really well handled was the final song. So the last goodbye, it's written, performed by Billy Boyd, Pippin. So you get this cool callback to him singing in Return of the King. So in the third of the first three films, here he is saying goodbye at the end of these three films. Yeah, I thought it was really effective. Of the three closing songs in the Hobbit trilogy, I think this was probably my favorite of the three. You know, one of the things that's very odd and feels out of place, because it is, but is the wereworms, right? These worms that tunnel through and...
Yeah, I didn't get the need for that.
Now, I will say this. They are not in the Battle of Five Armies,
no.
But there is a reference to wereworms in the book, and I assume that's where they got the idea
No
from.
kidding. Wow.
So I will read you the reference. This is Bilbo talking to the dwarves when they first appear at his house. So very early in the book. This is Bilbo talking. I'm quite sure you have come to the wrong house. As soon as I saw your funny faces on the doorstep, I had my doubts. But treat it as the right one. Tell me what you want done, and I will try it. If I have to walk from here to the east of East and fight the wild wereworms in the last desert. So there you go. That line apparently led to Peter Jackson going, how do we transport the orcs in secret? I know. Wild wereworms. So, anyway. But just to say, there is actually a precedent for the worms.
Man, okay. That's awesome.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about some things that maybe were not so effective. Let's wait on Alfred, because that is the least effective thing in this movie. So what are some other things before we hit Alfred that maybe didn't work so well?
A few things. Of course, everything with Legolas I wasn't a fan of. I hate to say that. He's such a great character in Lord of the Rings. Tauriel scenes, especially the Tauriel tension with the confrontation with Thranduil. Oh, that scene is so horrible.
That does not work at all.
That is just plain horrible.
She's threatening to shoot the king in the face. And it's like, if you take his point of view, it's not like, I get it. You'd rather him stay and fight. Yes. But he's not, his motivation isn't screw over everyone. His motivation is, my people are dying. I've had enough of this.
Right.
You know, he's coming from a place of, I want to save my people. So it's not, he's not being a terrible person. And for her to stand there like, no, I'll shoot you in the face if you don't change your mind. What?
Yeah.
The fact that she's still alive,
right,
or not in prison,
or not banished or something. Yeah, it's absurd. What else? You know, honestly, I think the first fight with Azog is very good. The music's really exciting during it, but I think that fight just goes on way too long.
So you're saying the first fight?
Oh yeah, there's a confrontation with Thorin and Azog. The first time they meet is very exciting.
In this movie?
In this movie. And then they get separated, and then up on Ravenhill. And then they fight again, and that's when they kill each other. I think it just went on way too long. It felt like they were trying to build up the fight between them. I get why, but it just doesn't work. Almost like Luke Skywalker versus Darth Vader in Return of the Jedi. Like, this is the one, you've been waiting for. But I don't think it really justified as much treatment as it got. So I wish that fight would have been shorter. There's some cuts in the movie I don't care for. For example, like I like this scene because it's got some cool visuals, but the scene with Legolas and Tauriel up in
Gundabad.
Gundabad, thank you. Looking at the soldiers coming out, that's really cool, and the light that goes out in the fortress is really cool. But some of that's really goofy. Like it cuts back to it, and then I think Tauriel says, "We better move," and then all of a sudden the bats pop out. The pacing just feels really goofy to me. And there's these corny lines like, "These bats were bred for only one purpose." For what? I mean, what? Of course, everybody knows what they're bred for. For war. Like, whoa! Watch out! That stuff doesn't work.
I agree. That line was like, what are they like? These bats were bred for only one purpose. Improv theater.
Yes.
Like, no, they were bred to attack. I got it. Like, what?
And then, the way Tauriel and Legolas jet up to that place how are they moving so fast?
Yeah, distances. That Gundabad to Erebor it's a few hundred miles. It's not a thing you could just do in a day and whoop whoop whoop. But whatever. They play with distances big time in this, but I don't know. I'll give them a little bit of a pass. But yeah, if you really start counting the miles, you're like, wait, how?
That could have done just so much. It could have been done so much more artistically. You did not have to have them go visit it. You could still have Gandalf talk about it like he does the Witch King in the Return of the King movie. You could do it all sorts of ways.
And also the history there that supposedly Legolas's mom died in Gundabad. That's not a thing in the books. I mean, that's fine for them to postulate how she might have died. But anyway,
those are some things I don't really care for.
When Thranduil talks to Legolas, and they try to, in my opinion, shoehorn in a reference to Aragorn.
Yeah, I know you didn't like that scene. I remember that.
Thranduil's like, go seek out a ranger. In the wild, he's known as Strider, but you must learn his real name.
For yourself.
Okay.
All right.
Aragorn is 10. He's 10 years old.
Oh!
And he's living with Elrond at that, and he doesn't even he's not even being called a ranger. He's got a fake name and a fake identity, and he doesn't even know who he is. And he's a 10-year-old boy. So it would be funny if Legolas showed up. It was like, I'm looking for a Strider. Like,
yeah, I remember
he
that
doesn't exist
you.
yet.
Yeah, right. When you told me that, yeah, Strider. How about Strider? That scene
Strider.
of all the Legolas scenes, that one's probably my least, the one that bothers me the least. I'm like, oh, okay, that's kind of a cool little tie-in, but I get your problem.
It's fine. It's just it didn't work. I mean, timing wise, that's a pretty big little anachronism there.
But
he's not a dude yet.
It'd be playing with time the way they play with distance. But like the very first scene with Legolas doesn't work for me. I think it's when Tauriel is talking to Keeley. And he's like, he gives her the stone or whatever.
Stone, yeah.
Little charm.
The rune stone.
And then she gets really stiff, and the camera pans, and she says, "My Lord Legolas." And he has this groan, like, "Take your leave of the dwarf." I'm like, what's that? Like, I was like, come on.
Yeah, that relationship, we talked about it last, in our recap of the last movie, but the relationship between Tauriel and Keeley just doesn't work. It doesn't have time to work. And so the cringiest line in the movie to me is actually Thranduil.
Oh gosh.
And when she's standing, she's over Keeley's body, and then he says, she's like, "Why does it hurt so much?" or something like that, and he's like, "Because it was real." And you're like, ugh.
Yeah.
Okay, if you have to character tell us it was real, it wasn't real. I mean, that was just. Ugh. That didn't work. I'm getting the willies now.
I'll take that any day over Alfred.
Yeah, exactly. All right. One other thing before we talk Alfred that was just we've been leading up to this in all our talk of the other 5 films, but here's where we see the culmination of just ridiculous elf physics.
Oh right,
they went so far over the top of just insanely absurd.
Yeah.
When he's walking on falling stones, you're like, oh.
Seriously. I mean, the audience where I was at started laughing. I'm like, oh.
Yeah. I think they laughed where I was too.
It's just dumb.
And the fact that he's like I mean, God mode, but he ends up just dispatching Balg. I'm like, does that mean you've just been toying with him all this time? Like, if you can do that, why didn't you just do that? You could have killed him the first time you saw him back in Desolation of Smaug, but he's like, I like to toy with my enemies. I don't know, he can literally do anything he wants. Anyway, that was way too OP, overpowered.
Yeah.
Anyway, but
not necessary.
Yeah. You don't want to be laughing in that moment. That's true. So we've been putting this off, but here it is. The worst thing in these 6 movies is Alfred, and we got a little taste of him in the second movie, but boy, we get Alfred and a half in this movie, and he ruins every single scene he's in.
And can I flash back to the beginning when I was sitting in the theater? I was wondering what the music would sound like, and I'm like, oh, it doesn't have the theme in it. Wow, that's interesting. I was wondering what the opening would be and how Smaug would look. So up to that point, I was like, holy man, this is pretty cool. And then it has this fade in of the screams of the people of Lake Town, and then a shot of just a demolished, destroyed Lake Town and people coming to the shore screaming. I was like, wow, this is intense. And then you hear, why me? It's Alfred. I'm like, okay, that guy's there, whatever. I mean, that was stupid. Terrible delivery. But boy, when I watched it just this last time, it's that first scene that is just so over the top horrible. And I remember sitting in the theater as his lines just kept going with my eyes going like, please stop, please stop. We gotta stop this. This movie is going downhill so fast. I mean, I really had that feeling like, you got to stop this. I mean, he comes out and he just delivers one line after the other. It's just horrible. And it just keeps going. Like, keeps going. Yeah, all hail King Bard. And it doesn't stop there. Oh no! It starts with the lady saying like, "Give me that blanket," and he starts getting in the tug of war fight. I'm like, "What is this? Oh no!" And then she drives him off, and then the thing with Bard starts, and then they try to kill him, and then he goes, "Won't you think of the children?" I'm like, by this point, I'm going like, "You got to be kidding me!" What? I have never of every movie. I can't think of a movie that I care about. I can't think of any movie that has a scene this bad. And I'm even including things in Attack of the Clones, like Softer Than Sand, all that stuff. This is way beyond bad. I mean, this crushes Softer Than Sand. I'm sorry.
And I think I'm not disagreeing with you. It's terrible. And I think when I watched it again here, just before we talked here, I think they just didn't know what they wanted from him. Like, that scene in particular where he like pretends to like be on Bard's side, and then everybody's gonna kill him. They're gonna string him up, and then Bard saves his life. Like, it's too serious to be comedy relief, right? Like, they're gonna kill him.
Yeah.
And so it's like mob violence, but it's not serious enough to be taken seriously. So it's like this comedic attempt at like really like a dark topic. It just doesn't work at all. And I don't see how I just want him to shut up. How did that get in the movie? It is so horrible. So after that scene, I was just like I was just dumbfounded. And the rest of the movie, whenever he would show up, they were bad. Every time he showed up.
I mean, his other scenes aren't nearly as bad as these, as though that first scene is just so horrible.
So you've got that first scene where, you've established that this guy is that I'm not going to enjoy watching. And then there are Bard and Gandalf both entrust him with pretty important tasks.
Why are you involving this guy?
Why?
Watch. Take care of Bilbo. Why?
I mean, there are reasons why, I get the idea that, hey, even the worst person deserves some mercy. And Bard shows him mercy. Fine. Yeah. Do you then still keep him on, like, in your circle of people that I depend on? No! You would never depend on that guy. And yet, they're like, okay, you need to keep watch. Make sure you don't fall asleep. Oh, you fell asleep. No, nothing gets by me. Oh, there's an army of elves standing in front of us. Oh, nice job. Like, of course, because he's terrible. He literally, I thought about this and I was like, oh yeah, he has zero redeeming virtues. Like, even a bad character, I was trying to think of an analog to, say, Lord of the Rings. I think the closest analog, and it's not a great one-to-one correlation, but would probably be Grima Wormtongue. Like, Grima is the guy dressed in black who's second in command, and he tries to, but he's sinister. He also has he ends up killing Sauron. I mean, he gets pushed too far. There's a moment where he's crying because he realizes what he's done. So he has some remorse. Like, he's not 100% terrible person. Alfred is greedy, lazy, cowardly, power hungry, amoral, not empathetic. There's nothing about him. He's a liar. There's literally nothing good about him at all. There's no reason to want him to be around. It's just a terrible character. Yeah. And why somebody like Bard would be like, I really need to trust you right now. No, you don't. Just put him in the back with everyone else, and then pick someone who's actually trustworthy that you could use as your second in command.
Gotta be plenty of them. So.
It's Alfred. Now, so I was so happy when he died, but even at that, I get why they cut that scene, because it just takes forever. I'm like, that just in case you out there have not seen the extended version. After he puts all the gold in his bodice, that's a hilarious scene.
Oh,
whatever. Oh, your slip is showing.
Your slip's showing.
He runs off, and then he, for some reason, hides in a catapult bucket. What? And then, there's a big fight between Gandalf and a troll. It's all played for laughs. You're like, what? And at the critical moment, Alfred drops a coin, and the coin falls onto the lever that makes the catapult go. And so it shoots him into the troll's mouth, and he dies. And you're like, so they played it all for laughs. And it's just like, what? In the middle of this really, everybody's dying around you, this battle. It's like, oh, look at the guy. Gold got him. That greed. Uh-oh.
Oh, there's your lesson, everybody.
Oh, yeah, just awful. And we even talked about it like, it would be so amazing to see a cut of this movie with Alfred's scenes cut out. Because it would shorten it, tighten the movie. It would not ruin it at all. In fact, I think literally, I don't think I'm understating this. I think it would raise the quality of this film, for me, 2 letter grades. I think it would go from like a C+ to like an A-, maybe a B+, maybe a 1 letter grade. But it certainly would elevate this film so much if Alfred wasn't a part of it. But that's just me. Just me.
Yeah, I agree. My reaction was basically, or my feeling in the movie was like, I was enjoying the parts, almost all of the parts, aside from the ones we mentioned, like the elf physics, for example. I enjoyed those quite a bit. But then it would cut to an Alfred scene, and everyone is just so horrible. It just kept pulling me back to this world of just stupidness, just stupidity. And it just, it made it hard to concentrate on the fantasy, what made Lord of the Rings so great. Being able to be immersed in that world, it just kept pulling me out. So that's why I had a hard time with the movie when I walked out. I did not feel satisfied at all. Despite some of those great scenes, having him in there is like just someone throwing a bucket of cold water in your face.
No argument. One other scene that was a little confusing to me, maybe you can shed light on it. I don't know. It's Keeley's death scene. So Thorin sends Fili and Keeley into the tower on Raven Hill to investigate. Oh, wait. Azog's gone. All right, want you to spy out. See if you can find him. Okay. So they go into the tower and like, you go up, I'll stay down here. Da, 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 da. And then, he found Azog. It was a trap. You're like, what was it? Like, you knew he was around and you were looking for him and you found him. Like, what did you think was going to happen? I'm not sure. Where was the trap angle? I thought right. The trap itself was, oh my God, Balg is coming from the north and that army's going to hit you, which it did later. And that certainly was like, uh-oh, look out, surprise. But where is the surprise in, I think Azog's in here. Yep, there he is. Oh, he got me. Like, what?
I agree. It's not fleshed out very well. It's not crafted.
Maybe there was a scene that got cut that we didn't. It wasn't in the extended either. But maybe I just didn't get the fact that like, yeah, he was there, like you thought he would be, and then he caught you.
I think it's because he was up on top of that tower, and then when they got there, he just disappeared. And remember, I think it was Dwalin who says, or somebody says he's run away, and then someone said no, and that's when Thorin.
So you think maybe they're looking with the idea that maybe he's not there?
That's my guess.
Perhaps. Yeah. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Maybe that's. But it's like I would assume he was still around until I've shown otherwise. But anyway. Yeah. All right. But yeah, small point. And in fact, yes, in the book, Fili and Keeley both die as well as Thorin. Something I did really enjoy in the extended was that it shows actual combat between the dwarves and elves before the orcs show up.
Yeah,
it doesn't like different. They don't like come almost fight stop. No, they're like no. They do those things. I really liked them actually. Elves shoot the arrows, and then the dwarves have these like arrow breakers. I don't know what they call them. But it's like these spinning javelins that like just take out a mass of elves. And then they're fighting it out. And you're like, woo, okay. Those are guys. Those are all troops that could have been used to fight orcs, and they're now dead. And I like the fact that there was some, stakes at it.
Like you said before, they could have cut out a lot of Alfred scenes and filled it in. Even though we have plenty of fight scenes, they could have filled it in with some more fight scenes that kind of added continuity. That being one. Yeah. And another is like when, in the theatrical version, when Thorin suddenly is like, I'm going to cut off the head of the snake, or whatever he says. I'm going to kill that filth.
Yep.
And suddenly they're on these rams and running. I was like, the theatrical is like, oh wait, what happened? Huh?
It was abrupt.
Yeah, but
the war wagon scene.
It makes sense in the extended version. You could see where they get them and they take their time to get up there. It works way better. Another thing that doesn't work in the theatrical is Legolas grabbing onto one of those bats, and then like moments later he's upside down. It's like, what? How'd that happen? But the extended version explains that. So it's just like there's a lot of like carelessness, or just like maybe it's pushed for time.
Well, and also with that war wagon scene. That was rated R big time. I mean, that was like those wheels cutting people's heads off as they like drive through the frozen river and stuff. I mean, there was like, they're chopping people in half. I think that was probably the thing of like, we're gonna have to cut it. They had like
you could cut that
Gatling gun they're shooting.
Right. It's crazy.
It was high action big time. But it also, you're right, narratively it showed how they got from point A to point B. And then they're like, okay, detach the rams from the war wagon and you got to go on the rest of your own. But you're right. You could have done that instead of an Alfred scene. And
it would have been a lot better movie.
Those were the thoughts I had, sir. Any final thoughts on, I guess, the 6 films in general?
Well, final thought on this movie and in the 3 Hobbit movies. When we found out there were going to be 3 movies, I was very excited. I believe we mentioned that the first Hobbit movie review that we did. I was a little disappointed that we're going to have as much connecting material, but heck, I'll take three Peter Jackson Middle-earth movies. Absolutely. After seeing the Battle of Five Armies, I wish it would have only been 2. And one of my fantasies is one day when I have plenty of time, we'll take these movies.
With too much time on their hands.
You and me, yeah. We will take these movies, we'll get the Blu-ray version or whatever, 4K version, and whenever 5 years from now, whatever it is, and we're going to cut this thing, and it's going to be a damn good movie. And there's not going to be any Alfred, or very little, and there's not going to be any elf physics and just stupid stuff like that. We're going to make a really good cut of it. The only challenge will be the music, because you can't have the music be cut up and be really goofy like they did to Empire Strikes Back. The special edition of The Empire Strikes Back has screwed up music. But no, we'll do it right. We'll try our best. But that's the way I came out thinking that. It's like, oh, should have been 2 movies. Everything that was created by Peter Jackson and his team and not in the books, cut, and it would have been great. Obviously,
we just talked about there are certainly things to like in this movie. In all 3 movies, there's major things to like. But yeah, the whole was not as good as the sum of the parts, and it just I agree. I think 2 films probably would have given you a better product.
I still love the first one by far. That's my favorite.
It sounds simplistic to say, boy, if you just hadn't included Alfred. But boy, if you just hadn't included Alfred, a character who is not in the book, you made him up, and for some reason gave him a ton of screen time, and it just was not a good idea. But
not a good way to go.
Again, hey, Smaug flying over a lake town, blowing it up with fire, getting shot with an arrow, falling from the sky, all that stuff. I just watch a movie of that and just eat all the popcorn in the world and be completely happy. So thank you for giving us really cool films to watch, Peter Jackson. I just, you were like, there were some very, very obvious choices, it seemed like, that you could have made that would have made these, like, elevated these movies big time. According to Theron, now we've got a project. We got to go make our own version of these. The next Dork Lords project. But until then, we've actually been asked to talk about the animated stuff as well. So we're going to be doing that. So thank you, Theron. I appreciate it, sir. And yeah, if you guys have some comments, feel free to put them in the comment section. We will be happy to chat about why we are so wrong about our takes on the Battle of the Five Armies.
We're not wrong.
But yeah, thanks, everybody.